An Auckland University linguist says the expression stick to your knitting can be traced back about 150 years. But as of today, he probably won't be using it again. Dr. Keith Montgomery from Auckland University's linguistics department says the idiom has morphed to mean stick with what you know, but would have originally literally meant stick to your knitting. So I asked if he thought the expression was derogatory.
It really is a matter of interpretation. It can be. It's like anything. You can turn it to any purpose. And it could be if you aimed it at someone deliberately. Of course it could be. But for the majority of people using it, I don't think it is. With idioms, they are just simply a linguistic shorthand, essentially a way of saying something using a little fixed piece of language. So no, over the course of its history, I don't think it would be counted as derogatory.
So obviously some people take issue with it being directed at the Prime Minister by another politician, a male politician. So the reason being, it seems, is that the suggestion is mainly women knit, so stick to women's work rather than other stuff. Has that been its meaning?
Well, that's a possible interpretation, and it may well be. Its origin is murky, but it could well be. It could well be its origin. You could see a conversation between a man and a woman when tasks were perhaps a little more clearly delineated, and she's asked to do something or asked something to be done, and the literal sense of the word is, stick to your knitting, and I'll stick to whatever it is that I do. But I would hesitate to think that it would be used in that way now. I mean, it's entirely possible that it could be, but I would doubt very much that it was being used in its literal sense. I think idioms are used unthinkingly. They're all in our heads. We have thousands of these things stored up, and we call on them when we need something in a shorthand way, essentially, to make a point.
When you say it's got murky origins, what is it traced back to? How long have we been using the expression?
It's been used for at least 150 years, I think. There are signs of it being used in the 19th century, so at least 150. I don't think it goes much further back. I couldn't find any real history done on the thing. The verb to knit has been around for 1,000 years. It goes right back into Anglo-Saxon, and it's commonly associated with both genders. It was just a case of tying fabrics together, essentially. The art of knitting has, I think, is relatively more recent, sort of around the 1400s. So the expression itself, though, I don't think is recorded before the 19th century.
Do you use the expression, stick to your knitting?
Well, I did until yesterday. Actually, no, I didn't use it very often. I'm sure I must have in the past. And I'd never associated a gender with it at all. It had been quite firmly fixed in my own mind that if I was going to use it at all, it was that you stick to what you know and I'll stick to what I know.
So would you use it now? If you used it yesterday and then now when you think about it, are you going to carry on using it?
Well, no, I probably wouldn't. Only because the awareness that's it's been made that there's now an association with knitting and gender again. Because as I said earlier, with an idiom, the meanings are bleached out, so associations are generally lost. But in the context of society as we have it now, and the clear awareness of gender division, it's been essentially revitalised. It's been brought back, the meaning has been put back in that had been bleached out of it over the last 150 or so years. So that raises issues then as to using it or not, and given the current climate, it's unlikely that I would.
So while it might have originated out of a degree of sexism, over time it was used as a more generic stay in your lane, stick with what you know, and now we're more aware of these issues, we've come a full circle, and perhaps it could be deemed to be sexist again.
It could be, yes, and yes, it could be. Essentially, that's exactly what's happened. It's come a full circle. I mean, as I said, we've got thousands of these things floating around in the language. I mean,
so what other ones are slightly dodgy? What other ones are slightly dodgy or borderline?
Drama queen. What sort of gender issues do we assign to that? I mean,
would you use that one?
I use it regularly to my son. But it's how far do we go with these kinds of things? I mean, if Paul Goldsmith had said to Jacinda Ardern to stick to her guns, is he aligning her with the NRA? Or if it said a stitch in time saves 9, perhaps pointing out that if haste was made, is he referring to people who sew? And once again, we have these gender alignments. It's how far do we push the reanalysis?
But you are a linguist, so words matter, don't they, Keith?
They do matter, yes.
So any advice when choosing them, then?
Well, I mean, I could quite glibly say, be careful, but we can't, because as I say, with the idioms, these things are locked in our heads, and we often use them, and in the literal sense of without thinking. It's not that people are designing or intending to cause harm. They don't want to offend. They simply use little chunks of language that have been drilled into them since they were 0.
And that is Dr. Keith Montgomery from the Auckland University's linguistics department.